Thank you, George. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks for coming this afternoon to listen to this. This is not a specific trip I'm going to be describing, but it'll be more of a trip of my own passion and the trip that photography has brought me to. Many years ago, I was crazy about canoeing, and I still am, and I still do canoeing. However, I took a camera with me, and I started taking pictures along the trip, and I thought that this was quite a great activity to partake in. On one of the trips on the Abitibi River, this is way back in 1976, I came back with slide film in those days. It was Kodachrome 25, ASA 25 in those days, or ISO today 25. And I developed my slides, brought them into the store, and as I got them back, the man said, listen, there's a contest up here by Nikon. It's called Response and Recognition. I think maybe you should just try it. So I looked through all my slides, and I came across one that I thought was, appropriate. I sent it in. Nothing happened for a month. 2 months later, I got a letter and saying that I won the international prize from Nikon. Fine. So along with the letter came a box with equipment, lenses, binoculars, cameras. Boy, I knew it now. This is it. So right away I start, canvassing all my friends, see who's most expendable and want to go on a canoe trip with me. And I decided there's one guy who'll go along, and I want to get a canoe trip that goes to the north as fast as you can, and that happened to be the George River. Little did I know it was that bouncy, but it was an exciting trip. However, there was a kind of an epiphany that happened along the way. Somewhere around maybe Indian House Lake, I kept taking pictures left and right, but then I started to realize that, I'm missing something here. I'm not having a chance to explore. I'm seeing the country, but I'm not exploring it. And I decided then and there that the next trip I'm going on, I will not just try to get from point A to point B, in other words, just get the T-shirt, but actually wear it. So in other words, I'm going to go somewhere, explore a little bit, learn what I can, and if my time's up, I'll just return the same way I came. I decided to do that, and I didn't know where, though, I would do this trip. When I got home, I expected this. The slides weren't any good because I was just too busy trying to get through the rapids and get to where I wanted to go. But when I came home, at that time, Time Life magazine had a kind of a book club that offered every 5 weeks you would get a book called The World's Wildest Places. And you'd get typically something like Borneo, the Amazon, Great Rift Valley, Labrador, the world's wildest places. I couldn't believe it. I live up in northern Quebec, and that was just over the next range of hills as far as I was concerned. But sure enough, when I opened up the book, and there's maybe 3-4 pages in, there was a double spread image, an aerial image of the Labrador Plateau with a huge rift running down the center with a river running in it and disappearing into the horizon. I was really smitten. I knew I had to go there. So I decided I'm going to go there. I tried to collect money. I fortunately got a grant from the Canadian Geographic Society to send me up there. And I started to venture up on the Labrador coast. And I said, I'm not going there just to get to another place, but I'm going to discover it, look around, tent, find something else, keep moving, come back, and so forth. Well, I didn't do it only once. I did do it only twice. I did it only 3 times. I did it 16 times. So you have to be careful what you read. I eventually just got to a town called Nain, and it's one of the last Inuit communities along the coast. And this is one of the first pictures I took, but I took it with a 4x5 view camera. I dropped the 35 millimeter camera because you might not see the difference here in these pictures, but when you make them bigger, they're a little more detailed and so on. And when you make them, let's say, 40 by 50 inches, you have the same detail in it as if you have an 8 by 10 picture taken with a 35 millimeter camera. So it leaves the viewer the option to go to it closely and really look at all the details, or they can step back and still feel like they're part of the landscape. It is more tedious, but however, it is still the best camera because it makes you think of what you're going to take a picture of. and you experience it a little more instead of doing like a little more like what's going on now, and I'm guilty of it just as much as everybody else, I think, is a machine gun photography. You go click, 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 click. It eventually bound to get something, hopefully, and you spend most of your time dumping the pictures, and you didn't really appreciate the picture while you were there. Some of the people ask me about photography, well, about lenses, and they get really involved with equipment and so forth, and they say, what lens should I buy? What camera should I buy? And so on. Well, I always tell them the best lens you can buy is a tripod, simply because it makes you stop and look at what you are looking, or seeing what you're looking, or vice versa, checking all the corners and appreciating the beauty of what's in front of you. So someone who was a canoeist who did photography, I'm now a photographer who does canoeing, simply because I want to get to certain places, and it's the only way I can get to that place. The first year I went with my 4x5, I went to this place here. It's called, just behind Nain, it's not very far. It's a lake called Lake Tassissuwak, and it means long lake. You've all experienced this before, and you have the same feelings I have. You know, these mornings where you get up, you open up the zipper of the tent, you're groggy, you're from the night, but you look out and all of a sudden the light explodes to you, and you feel like, God is coming. It's just a special morning. Well, of course, this is my first experience with the 4x5 camera in the wilderness. I've taken courses with it. I went to the States to make sure I knew what I was doing. And, of course, I panicked. Now, I got out of my tent, set up my tripod, put up my camera, do all these things. And this is the camera that people don't know, is where you have bellows on them, and you have a hood over your head, a dark cloth, and you've got a shutter release, and you've got to put in the slide in the back, and it's quite tedious and quite involved. So when I saw this scene, I knew I had to take a picture. However, this rock was not there, and I'm further down the beach, and it's about the only beach that there is on this lake. And of course, I set up the camera, and I can feel that there's a wind coming, the fog was disappearing. So I put up the camera as quickly as I could, look through the viewfinder, which is upside down and backwards. So you have to I'm dyslexic, so it's great. So I looked at it, but it was just a mirror image. And a mirror image is nothing but, to me, it feels like a gimmick simply by the fact that I got the same picture twice. Now I had to find a little bit of a foreground. So I'm panicking. I pick up all my equipment and all my bags and run down the beach as far as I can. And I see this little rock, and I get closer and closer, and the wind is moving. But I thought, well, this is it. I've got to stop and take a picture. So I find this rock, and I moved myself quite in the right position, just so that this line here kind of goes off into infinity with the rest. I was just about to take the picture. I was thrilled. I made my calculations and so on. But while I'm looking at the scene and I'm holding the shutter in my hand, the cable release in my hand, I notice in the front over here, I see the shadow of the sun. And I'm in the shadow. The sun is behind me. So I'm not going to take the picture because it costs $15. It kind of slows you down a little bit. And why would I want a picture of myself? So I look up in the last resort, and sure enough, there's a little cloud that seems to be going towards the sun. Well, another half a minute, I waited for it and ducked down, took the picture, click, and I got the picture. But just to show you that it does take a little bit of patience sometime, and also being prepared for what you're going to take a picture of. This is in the Labrador coast, and it's inland. And you can see me standing here, caught, simply because everybody knows, if you're a mountain climber, that when you go down a mountain, you're more likely to die than going up. And the reason this is so prevalent is the fact that you're coming down, you're tired from the whole day's work, and what happens is sometimes things don't go right or you get lost. Going up, you can pretty well know there's a cliff there. I'm not going that way. I'll go around the cliff. But coming down, if you do get lost, you keep on going down and you think you're going the right direction because you're going down, but you all of a sudden come to a cliff. And now being so tired, you've got to take all your stuff and start hiking back up the hill and hoping you're going to get a path somewhere else along the way. I think it's a good place for a survey now, isn't it, to see if you bring your own food or not, or if you live off the land. What do I do now? I lost it. Okay, thanks. This, like I said, this is about my photography. Now, in the same hills that I was just there, living off the land, I came across this scene that I thought was spectacular. You know, you're going around and you're looking and you're tired and you're looking up, and all of a sudden you come to some rocks that are quite interesting. So I thought, this is a great composition. And I thought, this is a picture I want to take. But using a 4x5, I'm a little more critical of taking a picture. But Labrador can fool you. And I look at it and I start seeing buttocks, I start seeing thighs, and I start seeing breasts and so on. And then, but of course I realize I've been gone from home for about 3 weeks already. It's time to go back. I did not take the picture because the light wasn't right. So being very critical now, I said, well, I'll wait for the light to change, but it wouldn't change hour after hour, and I was kind of on a schedule. Remember, I've been away from home for 3 weeks. I had to get back somehow, or it made me want to go back. Now, I decided this is it. I'm coming back here in the same place next year. You see the difference already with passing through and staying. So I went back home again all year, of course, just like all of you. You're planning your trip while you're even going home. You're happy to get home. 3 hours later, you wonder what you're going to be doing next year, and out come the maps already. So the second year I went back, and I climbed the mountain, and the light was beautiful, and I thought this was it. I got there, the light was beautiful, but I couldn't find it. This was pre-GPS, and I still don't own one, but I have all the excitement that goes with it. The third year I came back. I climbed it again. This time the light was perfect, and of course I found it. And here's the picture. And eventually what happens is I did find my way into the portfolio and also now into the collection of the National Gallery of Canada. Okay, thanks. All right, Labrador can fool you in many ways simply because there are no trees in the northern part in certain areas, and the point of references are really totally gone. You can see, can you see in the center, I'm standing beside the peak? Can you point at it with the laser? Yeah, right there. So you see the illusion of size in Labrador. I remember canoeing one area, and it wasn't this island, but it was another island similar like the one in the distance. And I've been up since about 6 o'clock. The light is up early in Labrador. I was up since 6 o'clock, and I decided I'm going to have, it was around 10 o'clock, I'll have lunch on the island. Well, when I got to the island, I didn't have lunch. I decided to have supper because it was 6 o'clock. It's such an elusive place. Also, I was there with a friend once, and there was a beach similar to this, and there was a little bit of debris on the beach, something there was an old 2x4 and there was a little can and so on. And I challenged my friend who just came up with me for the first time, and I said, you know, you got to be careful around this place. You don't know what sizes are really like. And he says, well, what do you mean? I said, how long do you think it'll take to get to that the rusty can over there? He says, well, it'll take me, half a minute, 15, 20 seconds. I said, well, if you do that in 20 seconds, I'll give you $20. So he started to walk, walked over, kept walking. Well, it was a 45-gallon drum. You see? I felt smug, and it was a good thing. Next one, please. Again, I like rocks. I'm just going to see rocks today, but it's just to give you an example of the illusion, how easy you can be fooled. And these rocks on the beach, but Labrador is a different place. It has different sizes, different qualities, and so on. Next one. There you can see the difference up in the corner where I am. Can you point to it? Right? There you go, you see. So what looks like ordinary pebbles and rocks, it really changes you. Okay, next one. One of the bigger lessons I learned when I started to canoe on the ocean compared to on the rivers was the lack of fresh water. At first, when I was down canoeing the rivers and so on, I always have a couple of liter bottles with me, and it was easy to get the water. You're living on it. There's always a stream coming in and so on. However, when you're up in Labrador, I took the same amount of bottles with me, and I thought, well, I'll pick up water as I go along the way. There's streams and so forth. But the illusion is the fact, the distances are bigger. The fjords that you cross might be 30, 40 kilometers long. And if you get to an area, the water that you see going up is not there on the way back. Here, the water, you can see some water falling down. This is great. The snow's melting up there and so forth. But as you go along, you get further south and so forth, the water that you used 3 weeks ago is not there anymore, and the stream is gone because the snow has melted. And also the other thing was that when you did get to the shore, well, if it was rough, you didn't land as easily. But most likely is in a rocky place like this, when the water falls down onto the ground, onto the scree, it disappears underground as soon as it hits it. And the only way you get the water is by walking another, let's say, 300, yards or meters up along the shore, trying to scramble, trying to get some water. And all I did was able to bring those little ones back to the boat. So it wasn't the most efficient way. This is also along the Labrador coast in some hidden fjords. The wall that you see there goes about 2,000 feet above you. There's a small beach. I'm just really stuck at the end of it there. And I was trying to capture some of the feeling that you would get being there. Again, it seems to be azoic. In other words, no life at all, no life form around. But however, you did feel that somehow, if you waited long enough, there'd be a dinosaur showing up, and you knew that somehow, not being a geologist, that this stuff is really old. And this stuff is like, the lost lands and so forth. So anyway, I had to take a picture of this. And of course, I didn't want to do this and not get a picture or be here. My boat is my little boat or canoe I had at that time. At that time, it was a small boat, a 16-foot boat. I had it parked on the side, bouncing on the shore and so forth. So I had to wait for this wave, and I put up my tripod, and it's not just running in there, click. I had to set it up, get all the measurements done and focus upside down, backwards, and so on. But you can see where the wave is starting to crest up on the right, and then it goes all the way across, and it goes up to the wet part, up to the dry part on the left. So you see, it's quite the wave. So when the wave comes in, I'm up to here in the water, and I'm holding on the tripod. Now, the tripod is rattling because the stones are just like marbles or pool balls, and they roll around. So I needed some stability. So I take everything with me, take my socks off, fill my socks up with a bunch of stones, tie them together, hang them on the bottom of my tripod, try to get some stability. You're in there bare feet, oohing and ahhing, taking the measurement, leave the camera, go, wave goes by, just shove, didn't move, great, run out again, come back in again, check it, do the next move, and every time just staring at the camera. Eventually, I waited for the wave to crest and click and got the picture there. Now, these caves, on the cave on the right, if you see the yellow spot on the left side of the cave, the yellow kind of above the white water, just on the left side of the cave, that if you're standing underneath that'd be about 2 times your height or 3 times your height. So it's a huge cave. And these caves are quite deep if you get into them. Okay, next, please. This is some of the shoreline. It seems easy sometimes to say, well, I'm close to shore, I'll be safe. And if you're canoeing close to shore and the weather's on like this, you might be safe. Yeah, you get on shore, you might dump or anything like that, so you're on shore. But once you're on shore and you're on land, I'm not drowned, but what do you do next? So you can be sitting there and you can try to swim, the canoe's gone, something is, going to go amiss for sure. Next, please. This takes a little bit more of, maybe I can try, can I just try I won't move it, I'll just do the pointer. I need some pointer, okay. There's one of the caves that I stopped at. It was low tide, and I was kind of tired of doing what I'm doing, and I said, I'm going to stop here and try to explore this cave. It was a risky thing simply because the tide was, on its way back in again. It was low as possible. So I pulled up my canoe, and I just wanted to explore this cave. Now, this cave is about as deep as from here, let's say, to the exit sign over on the other side. I entered the cave slowly, and just like walking into the theater or movie theater, your eyes are not adjusted to the light and so forth, and you don't know where you're stepping. I had a little flashlight with me, my camera and so on, but you didn't turn the flashlight on simply because you wanted to see what you're seeing. At the odd time, I'd make a mistake and just go and look around behind me because I hear a wave flopping or my boat bouncing or that polar bear's coming in or something of that sort. So I would turn back and I'd be blinded again and have to wait for another half a minute before I saw anything. So I moved in further and further, and the walls started to take on color and a sheen from all the pigments that came out of the cracked rock. Then I stared, and then I saw her. And I'm going to spoil this picture for you. It's an abstract. You can see there's the Queen Nefertiti. Her eyes, her nose, there's the headdress. She's sitting down, her knees, just like Abu Simbel, the sitting down of the... Do you see it at all, anybody? Yeah, okay. Now, she's I'm getting dry here. She's quite big, but so you're in there. Now, this is dark, like this room is, let's say, around where the books are. And you're setting up your camera very quickly. Again, it's, the bowling balls beneath you. Things are moving around. Every time you move, one rock's like a bunch of eggs. One moves the other one. The tripod moves again. Looking back again, watching the polar bears. My gun is beside me. I've got everything ready to go. I've got to focus. Now, how do you focus upside down and everything in the blackness? So I lay my flashlight on the side of the shelf that you see over here. I make a focus on it, come back, take a picture. The picture was about maybe 35 seconds. I thought there'd be a color shift, but there wasn't, fortunately, because the film was a slow film. And, of course, what I did, I quickly took the picture, shoved them together, and my boat was bouncing in the back. I'm going to get a drink of water here. Thanks. We're in the wrong place here. Got some things. Sorry. I hopped into the boat and I was gone. Okay. Can I try it? Or?
Yeah. This one, see that red button? You got your own laser.
Okay. I inhaled the water now. Took me 30 years to get to this point. Okay, thanks. It's hard to believe it's Canada, for me. You think that everything is out west or everything's down south, but you go up north and you go just to the coast and you just think there can't be anything there. But if you do enough exploration, you do find valleys that are different, and I'm sure if everybody knew about this, it'd be a national park or something of that sort. This is when it was a friend of mine is standing here, and this is one of the places we went to just to get water. There was water over here, but that's as far as we had to go. We didn't have to go all the way to the end over here. But this is a huge, what do you want to call it, promontory and so forth. All right? And it's the rare places that you would find actually the river beauty growing around so deep in one of these valleys. Next, please. Further again, the rock formation in Labrador must be a geologist's dream, simply because everything is so exposed. Everything is, there's no overburden. It's just right there. And you can see that in the rock, you can see all kind of, looks like fossilizations, but intrusions and igneous formations and so forth. And the rock is black, and the water seems to be coming right out of the wall of the mountain or a cliff. And it's quite compelling to stand there, listen to the roar, the noise, worrying about the polar bears, and just staying. And this is one of the things I really enjoyed, and I think that's why I went back again and again, simply because I was able to enjoy it and not just zip right through it. There's that old saying, you can travel all summer and get only halfway across your backyard if you took your time enough and looked enough. And this is what I was doing here. And I'd go to this place, and I'd be in this area, and my time would run out, and I'd actually go back to Nain, take a flight home again. And then next year, go further on, and then camp again, look around, nothing. Well, keep moving again. Something interesting? Well, I'll stay. So I didn't rush it, and that's why you can see I went back 16 times. Next, please. This is further up north. This is in the Torngat Mountains. This is the Nukvak Fjord. This is just before the storm was coming. It seems to be an area where the wind picks up very quickly, like in all of Labrador. I've been warned by the Inuit elders saying, you got to be careful when you're in those valleys and all that stuff. You might be without the boat, or your boat is not tied up. You can lose it very easily and so forth. Okay? But I have to mention this, is behind this mountain, there's another area that, it's just an interesting story. If you're not aware of it, it might be interesting to look up sometime. In 1952, 3 B-26 bombers left Greenland, and they're heading for Goose Bay in Labrador. The 3 of them left Greenland, but they encountered bad weather, and along the way, 2 of them decided that they're not going to go, and they'll turn back. But the guy who was in front leading the pack saw kind of a clearing, decided he's going to try Goose Bay and go anyway. And he went anyway, and along the way, the weather closed in again, and they lost all communication with Goose Bay. So they just kept going, and they made the mistake of thinking they were south of Goose Bay when they hit land, and they turned right, or they turned north. In reality, they're going further away from Goose Bay. So as they're going along further north, eventually, of course, they realized that they're running out of fuel, and they had to land. But there's no place to land in Labrador. So over this hill over there, there's a kind of a valley between, a flat valley between two lofty mountains. And this is where he chose to crash land. Well, they crash landed, and all 7 men aboard survived. So they thought this was okay. They survived. Nobody was hurt. They had enough food for a month. And they just waited for somebody to come and rescue them. After 2 weeks, they got fed up with waiting, and they said, listen, we're going to try. We have this rubber dinghy. 3 of the men, went out the rubber dinghy and decided to go and find a place called Hebron. They knew there was another Inuit village somewhere along the coastline. So they took off. Meanwhile, the 4 other men, they waited for rescue, hopeful that their friends would get there. Well, they started to run out of food. And you can know this all because of the diary that they wrote. And they started running out of food. They caught one bird and they ate it and so forth. However, it never seemed to cross their mind to kill any seals. Yet in the diary, they would say, well, there's seals on the ice today and blah, 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 and so forth. But they never bothered trying to. And eventually what happens is they died of starvation. The ironic thing about the whole thing is that 2 days later, some Inuit hunters came by and found them. And if they would have just walked over the next hill, they were only a 4-hour walk from salvation. And that's what the village was. The other irony about the thing is that this plane, next one please, this is part of the fuselage, is still there. And the irony about the whole thing is that over here is the runway at Saglik. This is where the radar station was built many years later. So I guess he chose well to where the land. They built a tarmac there, and that now is fully functional. The other thing that this goes on and on here. I'm going to run out of time, I'm sure. The pilot there was a young man in his 20s. He was supposed to be married that year. And when they brought his body back, his fiancée was so heartbroken that she actually, in a month, she died later of a broken heart. And so, okay. So, diaries, go ahead. Thanks. This is another cirque, or enclosed-in valley. It's an interesting place to try to deal with the caribou, simply because the caribou do meander along where the water goes down the sides, and the small bushes in the creek, and you can come up behind them and try to scare them, or try to chase them down a little bit, have a little fun. You're getting bored, sing Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer to them or something, but they never go into the valley. They'll move away maybe 5 feet, but they'll always try to get around you. They know that it's locked up and closed shut. This is where I discovered what the Inuit elders told me about the wind. I was taking a picture of this waterfall. This waterfall is 450 feet high. So imagine Niagara times. And I'm standing somewhere down here. I'm taking a picture of this whole scene, and I can hear some funny noise. And I'm looking back to where the ocean is down on the right side, and I can see the bushes close to the stream are starting to move very quickly. And actually the leaves are small little krumholz, small alders, and the leaves start flying off. And I can hear the wind coming, but there's nothing moving around me, but I suspected it was going to be big. So I just collapsed my tripod quickly, lay everything down, took my glasses off, shoved it in my shirt, lay flat on the ground, hung onto a rock, and then it just came, and all the pebbles came banging like this, and my pants pockets opened up, the Kleenex flew out, and as fast as it came, was gone. And I stood up and looked around, and the thing that was interesting is that this waterfall was not there anymore. All the wind was holding up the water, and the water was boiling and roiling right on top of it, and it couldn't come down anymore. And then about maybe held there for maybe 5, 6, 7 seconds, and then it just broke apart in a big foam, and then the wind was gone and it all dropped down, and the whole thing was black from water. So it gives you an idea of the intensity of the wind. Next, please. This is a regular scene, but it's a scene that I'll never forget, and something that didn't happen exactly here, but a little further lower down. It was one of these nights that, you get caught in the rain, and I think all of you have had the experience where it's miserable, there's no place to camp, you're wet, you're hungry, you're tired, that's it, you've had it. And I pull my canoe ashore, and the wind is blowing, so bad that I have to hold my tent down with one knee. No place to put in the stakes simply because it's too hard. And I had to find rocks to put around the edges. So I eventually lean out far enough. I find rocks, great piles of rocks, great, oh gee, nice little larder here. Pick them up, put them on this tent, set it up, spend the whole night flapping in the wind. Oh, it was a real terrific night. I got rested and I got up in the morning and looked out. And where did I get my rocks? It was I undid an Inuit grave. And there was somebody home too. But it makes you feel twice. You kind of look around and you're sure the camera's around somewhere, or some of the spirits or the Torringats are watching over you, and you don't know how to get over it again. And this over here is one of the graves, you see. And if you did move one on a rock or peek inside, you can see if there's something there. Sometimes they're disturbed by animals. Sometimes they're so old there's nothing left. But at first you don't see these graves simply because of the fact that you don't know what you're looking for. Once you start to see one, you start to see the other one. Just something like frogs in a pond. You hear them all over the place. You can't see them. Oh, there's one there. Oh, now you see them. Same thing there. Next, please. This, in reality, is a much more colorful picture than what you're seeing here. It looks actually, more polluted than anything else. But this is about maybe twice my height, and this is a water stream that trickles down here. Everything is covered with the pigments that come out of the fissures of the rock. It's been there for thousands of years, and eventually what happens is the water evaporates and leaves a kind of a frosting of all the pigments. Now, it's so delicate that just like taking pictures in the snow, you don't want to walk anywhere because you leave a trace or you leave a mark. So I took off my shoes, and in sock feet and my stockings, I walk around my socks simply because I don't want to mar the landscape. Because if you do go on it, it's like that, and it'll stay like that, just like the lichen on the tundra. It'll be marred for 1,000 years, and it will never change. Next, please. Along the coastline, the reason I have this in here is simply to show that the coastline can be very benign looking, and this is where I traveled in the mountains for the whole day. I knew that my tent couldn't be held up by stakes and so on, but the rocks on the outside might not be enough. So I actually took 4 boulders, big boulders from here, and I put them inside my tent just to make sure that it doesn't roll away. Well, when I got back, I had my rifle with me. I got all my big camera equipment, weighs 42 pounds, tripod, and then my rifle and everything on my shoulder, and always this hand free in case I trip or fall. But I came back after a whole day, and I looked, and my tent's gone right away. Boom, polar bear. It's got to be a polar bear. So I'm looking around, and making sure there's no bear. However, what happened was that the tent got rolled away in the wind. I found it further down on the beach, all the carbon fiber rods broken up and so forth. I wrote the company after, and I said, listen, when I bought this $500 tent, you said it was, Everest proof. And they were very nice about it. And immediately, let's say a week later, I got the new rods and everything and that sort. And it says, well, we'll still hold to our advertisement that it is Everest proof, but it's not Labrador proof. And so, 2 more minutes? Okay, we got to move on. Next one, please. Keep going. Okay. Just one of the examples, if you went quickly here, the thing that interested me here was not just the rock formation, which is the size of a house. However, it was the reflection of the rock, but not that, but the reflection in the reflection, and so forth. And you wonder where this rock comes from, because you got all these, glacial erratics everywhere. But if you looked up on the side of the mountain, you can see a fresh scar where it all fell down. Next, please. This is just reminding me of meteor showers. There's a mountain here, northern lights coming down, so forth. And most people don't realize this, that if you're looking out for northern lights, if you don't see the stars, you won't see the northern lights, because the northern lights are a lot less bright than the stars are. Next, please. This is 10 Mile Bay. I was bored one day here, and I picked up on some rocks along that shore and started throwing them into the pond and so forth, and I found out the rocks are kind of heavy, and I wondered why they're so heavy, and I kept throwing it away. I should have put them in my pocket, because I went back home and found out what I was playing rocks with was now Boise Bay, and that was the nickel deposit. I wouldn't be here. Next, please. Up here, there's an Inukshuk. It's maybe the size of a fridge and a half. It weighs at least 2.5 tons. And it's set up vertically, and it's not square on the bottom. It had to be tilted, and it points some way. And you can imagine in those days when they built this, how they've managed to do it with no tools, no lever, no big pieces of wood and so forth. I wish I had this in my backyard. I wouldn't have to mow the lawn, but it'd still be beautiful, I think. Next, please. Okay, I'll just run through them now. We're running out of time, but I just want to get to the last picture before I... Please, next one. Okay, trails. Follow the Caribou Trail, because if you go in the same direction, go in the same direction they are, because they've done it for 1,000 years. They won't come to a cliff like I did in the second picture. Whoop, back. Okay, one intrusion. Maybe go back one more. That's okay. That's the only caribou I saw that time. Many years before, in the 70s and 80s, you go down the rivers and so on, and you would see 100,000 caribou. Now, populations have diminished down to about 8%. Next, please. Just keep going. I'll end it when I get in. The wind takes the bark off of the small spruces. Next, please. When you see a place like this, you realize that, you shouldn't be there maybe or not. And one more. Okay. This is small. 1 minute, George. Okay. 1 minute. Okay. I have 2 more slides, and I just want to get over this. This is a place called Cutthroat Island. The man who's there invited me in, and he's an Inuit, and I walked in, and he had a stove, a 45-gallon drum stove with an opening on the side, stovepipe on a table, on a plywood table. And I asked him, I says, how come the table doesn't burn? He says, well, we fill it half with sand. Good idea. That's great. So they say something in it to laugh a little more. And then, there's a white man doesn't know everything, I guess. But yeah, I was interested in that. And then I said, well, why is it so high up? And he says, well, my wife doesn't like to feed the stove bending down. I said, that's interesting. And he says, would you like a tea? He says, yeah, sure. And he walks out, get the tea. And the wife comes to me and she says, that's not all true. He just didn't bring enough stovepipe. Next one. And that's it. It's the last one, George. This is not the same polar bear that's on the wall over there. But every time I see this, I'm still trying to find my heart and put it back in my chest. Because in that morning, I like to pray for rain. I don't like the sunshine in the day. I love the rain. I'm sliding out of the tent, and I look up, and there on the ridge is the polar bear looking directly in that direction. Must have been a female there, because he didn't look at me at all. But I just wonder what he was doing when I was sleeping with my toque down over my ears and not worrying about anything. He looked for 5 seconds, turned around, and walked in the distance, and that was it. Thank you very much, folks.